party was loud, crowded, and filled with the scent of jollof rice and aged wine. But inside the massive sitting room of the Obaikwi family compound, the air turned cold. Everyone was watching him now. Jason stood in the center of the room, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a crisp white senator outfit. His voice sliced through the music and laughter like a knife. "That child is not mine," he shouted. Silence, then gasps, then whispers. Across from him, Amaka stood frozen, holding the baby, barely 6 months old, tight against her chest. Her eyes were wide, but dry. She had already cried enough. She wasn't here to beg. She just wanted him to acknowledge his own blood. But Jason didn't flinch. He turned to face the guests, family members, elders, neighbors. "She's lying. She trapped me because I was doing well. She was already seeing someone else when this baby happened." His mother, Mama Jason, stood awkwardly in the background, folding her arms. She had always disliked Amaka, a seamstress's daughter, born in Ajagunal, and not what she envisioned for her son. Jason kept going. "I took care of her because I was kind, not because I was the father. Let's not embarrass ourselves any further. This baby is not mine." The baby whimpered. Amaka's voice trembled, but she didn't raise it. "You know the truth, Jason. You know what we had." Jason looked away. "One day," she said softly, "you'll wish you handled this differently." He rolled his eyes. "I doubt that." Then she walked away, just like that, through the crowd of stunned relatives, past the gossiping aunties, through the gate, disappearing into the night like a bad rumor nobody wanted to face. No one stopped her. No one followed. Jason exhaled slowly, adjusting the gold watch on his wrist. "Let's not let one mistake ruin a beautiful evening," he announced, forcing a smile. "Please enjoy yourselves." The DJ resumed the music. Plates were refilled. But the celebration had a bitter aftertaste now. A stain no music could wash away. In the weeks that followed, life moved on. Jason's family praised him for dodging a bullet. He focused on his rising tech company, gained more investors, bought a house in Lekki. He began dating again. Amaka was rarely mentioned, and the child? Never. But secrets don't stay buried forever. Years passed, and on a warm Saturday in June, Jason stood at the altar of a grand church in Victoria Island, adjusting the sleeves of his white agbada, smiling proudly as the choir began to sing. He was minutes from marrying the woman of his dreams, until the usher tapped him gently on the shoulder. "Sir, someone left this envelope for you. Said it's urgent." Jason frowned. "What is it?" The usher handed it to him. Brown, unmarked, sealed tight. Jason opened it, and the smile vanished from his face. Inside was a DNA test, and a letter, from Amaka. Jason didn't move. The choir sang on. His bride, Neka, stood at the far end of the aisle, radiant in a lace gown, eyes locked on him, smiling. But Jason couldn't feel his legs anymore. His hands trembled as he unfolded the letter. The paper was soft, worn, like it had been read many times before. The handwriting was unmistakable, Amaka's. The same neat, deliberate script that once left notes in his apartment back when love still lived between them. But before he read a word, his eyes darted to the DNA result. Paternity result. 99.99% probability. Jason Obaikwi is the biological father. He nearly dropped the envelope. The letter began simply, "Dear Jason, you lied, but I forgave you. You abandoned us. But I raised our child anyway." Jason's head spun. He glanced around. Nobody knew yet. The pastor was preparing the vows, flipping through his Bible, waiting for the signal. Ushers stood in neat lines. Phones were raised to capture the perfect moment. Friends grinned in the front rows. His mother sat like a queen in coral beads, beaming at her future daughter-in-law. No one knew that the groom was unraveling inside. Jason quickly folded the paper and slid it back into the envelope. But it was too late. Something inside him had cracked. A sharp guilt twisted in his chest, as if the truth itself had returned not just to haunt him, but to humiliate him. "Is everything all right?" his best man whispered beside him. Jason nodded stiffly. Yeah, just give me a second. But he didn't take a second. He took 3 long, slow steps backward and walked out of the church. Whispers started immediately. Confused glances. Nneka frowned, her smile dropping. The guests murmured. The pastor paused. Outside, Jason leaned against the church wall, breathing hard. He felt like he'd been slapped by his own past. Back in the day, Amaka had been his secret piece. He was building his first startup, broke, tired, with only dreams and anxiety for company. She was the one who brought him food after long nights, who prayed with him when investors didn't call back. They had loved hard and recklessly. When she told him she was pregnant, he panicked. Not because he didn't love her, but because he feared what his family would say, what Mama would say. But Amaka refused to beg. And that pride, that beautiful, burning pride, was what pushed him to humiliate her. In public, just to save face. Now the face he had saved was melting. He looked back at the church doors. He could walk back in. Pretend nothing had happened. Marry Nneka. Live the lie. But in that moment, the silence around him was louder than the wedding choir. And in that silence, something whispered. She left not out of shame, but out of love. He opened the letter again, this time to read it through. And by the time he got to the last line, his heart was no longer just broken. It was burning. You denied your child, Jason, but he never stopped asking for you. Today I give you a choice. Keep pretending, or step up and become the man he deserves. Jason's phone buzzed in his pocket. A message from an unknown number. It was a photo of a boy. His face was unmistakable. It was Jason's, only smaller. The photo on his phone screen wouldn't stop staring at him. A boy no older than 6. Dimpled cheeks, curious eyes, a half-smile tugging at his lips. He wore a school uniform, blue checkered shirt and brown shorts, one strap of his backpack slipping from his shoulder. His name was written neatly at the bottom of the message. Jamil Jason Obikwe, your son. Jason's throat tightened. A memory flashed, him as a child, sitting on his father's shoulders during Christmas, laughing without fear. That same light now stared at him from a child he had turned his back on. A child who bore his name, but never his presence. Inside the church, murmurs had turned into confusion. The pastor shuffled awkwardly. Guests whispered. Nneka stood at the altar, her hands shaking. Her bridesmaids glanced nervously at each other. Mama, should we check on him? One of the relatives asked. Mama Jason waved them off, forcing a smile. He'll be back. Maybe just nerves. But inside her chest was pounding. Jason wasn't the type to flinch. And whatever had shaken him enough to walk out of his own wedding was no small thing. Outside, Jason paced. He read the letter again. Then again. He kept staring at the line. He never stopped asking for you. He had convinced himself over the years that the child didn't matter. That if he didn't look, it didn't exist. That by pretending he could delete what happened. But here it was. A boy with his eyes. A letter with the truth. He sank onto a stone bench at the side of the church, hands in his hair. His best man, Femi, found him minutes later. Bro, what's going on? Femi asked, crouching beside him. Jason looked up slowly. She sent a DNA test. The boy, Amaka's boy, he's mine. Femi blinked. Wait now? She sent it now. Jason nodded. She waited all these years, and sends it during your wedding? Jason exhaled. Maybe because it's the only way I'd finally read it. Femi rubbed the back of his neck. So what are you gonna do? Jason didn't answer. He stared at the wedding hall through the glass window. The lights, the decorations, the crowd waiting for him to say, I do. And in his mind, the sound of Amaka's voice echoed. You'll wish you handled this differently. He had hurt her, not just privately, but publicly, stripped her of dignity, walked away like her love and her child meant nothing. And now the world was watching again. Would he keep pretending, or tell the truth? Inside, the pastor had just raised the mic again. "We will now begin the vows," he said with a warm smile. "Let the groom please return to the altar." The church doors opened. Heads turned. Jason walked back in, envelope in one hand, microphone in the other. He looked directly at Neka, then at the guests. Then, quietly but clearly, he said, "Before I take these vows, there's something I need to confess." The room fell into complete silence. No drums. No soft organ in the background. Just the sound of Jason's voice echoing through the marble cathedral. He stood tall, but his hands betrayed him. They trembled slightly as he clutched the brown envelope. Neka stared at him, frozen in her white gown. Her bouquet dipped slightly in her grip. Mama Jason's smile evaporated. Her mouth tightened into a hard line. "I know this isn't what you all came to hear," Jason began, voice shaking slightly. "And I didn't plan this. I wish I had the courage to say it earlier. But I've lied. For years." Somewhere near the third row, someone coughed. The sound of a camera shutter clicking echoed softly. The videographer hesitated, unsure whether to keep filming. Jason swallowed hard. 6 years ago, I denied a child. A boy. His mother's name is Amaka. He paused, then looked straight at Neka. She told me she was pregnant. I was scared. My family, they didn't approve of her. And instead of standing by her, I chose pride. I accused her. I humiliated her. I disowned my own blood in front of the world. Neka's lip trembled. One of her bridesmaids leaned forward, whispering her name, but she didn't respond. Jason opened the envelope slowly, lifting the paper inside. "This is a DNA test. It proves what I've always known but refused to face." He held it up. "The boy is mine." A wave of gasps filled the room. People whispered names, shook heads, shifted in their seats. Jason turned to the pastor. "I know this church preaches truth before vows, so I'm giving it." He turned back to Neka. "You don't deserve to be blindsided like this. And I'm sorry." Mama Jason stood abruptly. "Jason, that's enough." "No, Mama," he said, still looking at his bride. "I've lied long enough." She began walking toward the altar, her face red. "You want to disgrace this family? On your wedding day?" Jason finally looked at her. "I already disgraced myself 6 years ago. Today, I'm doing something different." Neka looked down at the letter in his hand. "And what about me?" she asked quietly. "Am I just collateral damage in your redemption story?" Jason's voice cracked. "No, I loved you. I still do. But you deserve someone who stands on truth." Tears welled up in her eyes. "So do I marry a man who just remembered his child on the day of his vows?" He looked down, ashamed. "You don't have to decide now, but I had to tell you. Before we make promises we both can't live with." She stood silent. And then, from the back of the church, another figure walked in. It was a woman, slim, simple wrapper, scarf tied around her head. And holding her hand was a little boy, eyes wide, watching everything. Amaka had arrived. All eyes turned. Amaka stood at the back of the church, not in makeup or expensive fabric, but in quiet dignity. Her wrapper was faded, her shoes modest, but she held herself with the strength of a woman who had learned to live without applause. Next to her, little Jamil held her hand tightly, wide-eyed at the sea of faces staring back. Jason's breath caught in his throat. It had been years. Amaka looked older, more tired maybe, but no less beautiful. There were shadows under her eyes, the kind that only come from raising a child alone. Yet her gaze was steady, calm, almost merciful. "Amaka," Jason whispered. No one moved, not even Mama Jason, who had sat back down in stunned silence. Even the pastor seemed unsure what to do, his fingers gripping the pulpit like a man holding his breath. Amaka walked forward, each step slow, deliberate, as if she wasn't walking into a church full of judgment, but toward peace. She stopped in front of Jason, then knelt down beside the boy. "Jamil," she said gently, "this is your father." The boy looked up at Jason, confusion in his eyes. Jason fell to his knees. "Hey, buddy." The words caught in his throat. I'm your dad. Jamil tilted his head, then blinked slowly. You look like me, he said. Jason let out a laugh and a sob at the same time. Amaka looked away, swallowing hard. Her hand trembled slightly. Jason turned to her. Why now? He asked softly. Why today? She looked at him for a long moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out a second letter. This, she said, was meant for you the day I left. I dropped it with your mother. I guess you never got it. Jason glanced at his mother. Mama Jason looked away, shame in her eyes. He unfolded the letter. Dear Jason, you didn't just break my heart. You shattered everything we built. But I'm not walking away because I hate you. I'm walking away because our son deserves peace. He deserves to grow up without the weight of your denial. He deserves joy even if it means growing up without you. But if one day you wake up and decide to be the man he can look up to, then find him and prove it. Amaka. Jason's hands shook as he folded the letter again. I never saw this, he said quietly. I know, Amaka replied. But now you have. Behind them, Neka stepped forward. Her veil was lifted, her face pale but composed. She looked at Jason, then at the boy, then at Amaka. I think you three need a moment, she said, her voice calm. This wedding can wait. She turned to walk away, past the stunned guests, past the altar, past the cameras. Jason watched her go, guilt and gratitude mixing in his chest. He turned back to Jamil. I don't deserve forgiveness, he said, but I'd like to earn it. The boy looked up. Can I call you daddy now? Jason's throat tightened. Only if you want to. Jamil nodded. Jason reached for his hand. And behind them, Amaka finally let out the breath she'd been holding for 6 years. But just as peace began to settle, a loud voice called out from the back. Before you celebrate your happy reunion, ask her about the other man. Heads turned. Jason froze. Amaka's eyes widened. And the crowd turned toward the one voice they never expected. Mama Jason. Gasps echoed through the church. All eyes turned to Mama Jason, now standing tall, voice sharp, chest heaving. Her head tie was slightly askew from the sudden outburst, but her gaze was unwavering, locked onto Amaka. You think you can just show up and scatter my son's life? She barked. Before you all clap for her, ask her who else she was sleeping with back then. Jason's heart dropped. Mama, he started. No, she snapped, her finger trembling as she pointed at Amaka. She wasn't loyal. That boy might not even be yours. Why do you think I kept the letter? Because I knew. I was protecting this family. The church murmured again, waves of whispers crashing across pews. Amaka didn't flinch. She took a step forward, her voice low but cutting through the noise like glass. You kept the letter, and a lie, she said. But since you want the truth, let's speak it all. She turned to the guests. Yes, I dated someone else, before Jason. Before he and I became serious. But when I got pregnant, I knew who the father was. I never hid that. She reached into her bag again. Another envelope. She held it high. This is his test. And this one, she held up a second, is the other man's. She handed both to the pastor. He scanned them quickly, then looked up. They both say the same thing, he announced. Jamil is Jason Obikwe's son. No one else's. Mama Jason staggered slightly, her hand reaching for the pew. The silence was suffocating. Jason stepped toward his mother. You lied for years, he whispered. You let me believe I was right to abandon them. You stole time from me. Tears glistened in her eyes, but pride kept them from falling. I did what I thought was best for you, she said. No, Mama, Jason replied. You did what was best for your reputation. He turned to Amaka, shame in every step. I can't change the past, he said. But if you'll let me, I want to be in his life now, in yours. Even if it takes years to rebuild what I broke. Amaka studied him. Jamil looked between them. Can we go home now, Mommy? The boy asked. Amaka smiled gently. She took his hand, then paused, and extended her other hand to Jason. Not in forgiveness. Not yet. But in possibility. Jason took it. Behind them, the pastor closed the Bible. The wedding was over. But something more sacred had taken its place. Redemption. Outside, as the sun cast soft light through stained glass, Jason walked out of the church. Not as a groom, but as a father. For the first time, it felt right. No tuxedo. No choir. Just him, Amaka, and a boy who finally had a name to call his own. Daddy. And that was enough. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bell. Thank you. We hope to see you in our next video.